Hi guys, I'm on the floor. My desk is really, really messy and I just wanted to be cozy, comfy, cozy, and so I'm sitting here. So today I'm talking about North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. I actually have it right here. So I listened to this actually on Spotify. I already had the hard copy and I plan to do some kind of like reading along as well, but and I did, but it's nice for me to use the audiobook as well because I just can't read that much. A lot of this book I did while making this cardigan. However, even though this audiobook was quite long, it was like 18 hours. I mean, I listened a little bit faster than that, but still, this took way longer. Way longer. Way longer than that. I got these adorable, look at these. I got these for Christmas from my sister. So I just put some for some key points that I want to talk about. So anyway, this book is, if you don't know anything about it, it is written in, let me just check, 1855. And it is about kind of the Industrial Revolution a little bit in England. Maybe textile revolution is a better word for it, because this was a little bit before the Industrial Revolution. But anyway, this is when factories, this was kind of the first factories that were showing up in England that I am aware of. So let's talk a little bit about the movie. The movie is a classic. The movie is so good. It's one of my absolute favorites, one of my comfort movies. Very well done. Am I saying that because I love Richard Armitage so much? Maybe. But also, it's a really good movie. My sister recommended this book to me, and when she was explaining how good it was, she said, it's just like the movie, which was the perfect thing to say to me. I started reading it right after that. And I'll say, I want to counter that by saying I know what she meant. It is just like the movie. Like, the movie is very accurate. However, it's, better, of course. Of course. Even when a movie is accurate, it cannot have all the nuance that the book has. So you will always gain something when you read the book, even if it's a really accurate movie. Even if you've seen every version of Pride and Prejudice, you're still going to gain something by reading the book. And I stand by that. But there is no denying that the book is different. And one of the things that I really like about the book that doesn't come across in the movie, it's just not something that really can come across in movies, is the writing style is very, it's just not something that you see in like modern books. They just don't make books like this anymore. You're just not seeing this kind of writing style in modern books, which is it's a narrator style. And she says I a few times. This is third person about them. It's like an omniscient view of this entire story. It's like the way you would tell a story to a friend. Like, you're not telling it from one person's perspective and then hopping to the other one. Like, it's just omniscient. And it's so nice to read books like that. It's so nice. It's not like this is dual POV or this is single POV or whatever. It's not, because it's just a story. Okay, and it's just a narrator telling a story, and the story is really good. So I love that writing style, and it's really refreshing to read it. So that I really enjoyed. Another thing that I find to be different from the movie is that I preferred, of course, in the book, was that there's a the movie is made for a modern audience. It was made, not too long ago. And there are things that we simply culturally are not really going to pick up on because they've changed so much since 1855. So one of the things that is less easy to understand is like this upper class, the gentleman's class. There's nothing good necessarily in modern culture about like a guy who doesn't work. That's not really like something we're seeking out. However, that was, like working was like what the lower class did. And the upper class was like relying on, I don't even know. Historians, please let me know. Like, what is it? I know they're making money, $5,000 a year. What? How? If I had to guess, it's like not only do they have estates that they manage as far as what they live in, and like it's pretty, but also farmland and such that they own, that they're getting money from, but they're not working, obviously. That would be a gentleman class. Okay. Vicars, is that what they're called? Priests, pastors, whatever, would also be in that category because they're like totally different. But they only, as far as I know, gentlemen or people of that class can become a pastor, be over a church. All that to say, this guy is pretty rich, but, he owns a thing that makes money, but the thing that makes money is a little bit more dirty than what, regular gentlemen are doing. And so in the movies, okay, there's a scene which is the first time we see Mr. Thornton, he beats up this guy who is an employee at one of the mills, or at his mill, because he saw him lighting a cigarette or a pipe or something in the mill. Okay, this is a cotton mill. And he beats this guy up, and our main character is so offended. Margaret sees this and she is so offended, and it's like, oh, this is the way of the North. That does not actually happen in the book, and I thought that was an interesting way for the movie to kind of quickly show you that they're not in the same class. She is not just offended, but like appalled by his behavior. It's the kind of thing that a gentleman would never do. So that was a quick way to set them apart from each other. So I thought actually it was really interesting that the movie did that. And it was, in my opinion, pretty effective in showing that, like, she's a lady and he's like working. He's a working man. Okay, he's serious about this stuff. And then I just have some kind of excerpts and things that I wanted to mention / talk about. First, there is this understanding that her mother could have done a lot better than her dad, and she was from a pretty rich family, and she was in love with the dad, but then like it just didn't, I don't know if they fell out of love or she just was like kind of thinking that their life would be different than it was or what, but the mother was pretty unhappy with her life, and Margaret is the kind of middleman between the parents all the time. In fact, so much so that her dad comes to her, and I mean, she's like 18 or something. I don't know. She's not that old. Comes to her to tell her that he's wanting to leave the church and asks her to tell her mom. And I'm like, not her job. Oh my gosh. He's like too scared to tell the mom. Now, just like in the movie, to be honest, I was not following completely what his reasons were for leaving. In fact, I felt that it was even more ambiguous. Like they maybe made it a little bit more clear in the movies because it was like modern audience is not getting this. Yeah, I didn't get it from the book. I mean, everything that I understand about why he left the church is what I learned from the movie. It was not even as clear in the book. I don't know if that's because I'm like, there's something culturally that I'm not getting, from the time period, or if it's like just it wasn't that clear. I don't know. But the point is he leaves the church, asks Margaret to tell the mom, and she does. But there's this understanding that like the mom could have done a lot better. And Dixon, who's their, lady in waiting or whatever, followed. She essentially was like being paid. She's being paid for by the mother's estate that she used. She's part of the dowry, kind of. And she's like really upset by how far the mother had fallen. Not just in marrying this guy and having this kind of lifestyle, but when they move to the north, it's like they're in this tiny house and the air quality is bad, her health declines, and it's like it's all this guy's fault. So it was almost even more obvious, the resentment and everything in the books, because we're seeing more conversations between Margaret and her mom, seeing more conversations between Margaret and her dad, and it's just like they're doing bad. The dad feels super guilty and the mom is just resentful all the time. So that was really hard to read and very sad. And then they have a hard time finding another lady in waiting, or I don't know what you call it, maid, I guess, because of their salary is really low, or pretty much his salary is really low. So Margaret ends up doing a lot of work. And the mom is like really upset that Margaret has to do work. Here's an excerpt on this is from page 67. The mother is speaking. Yes, if anyone had told me when I was Miss Beresford and one of the belles of the county that a child of mine would have to stand half a day in a little poky kitchen, working away like any servant that we might prepare properly for the reception of a tradesman, and that this tradesman should be only... Oh, mamma, said Margaret, lifting herself up, don't punish me so for careless speech. I don't mind ironing or any kind of work for you and papa. I am myself a born and bred lady through it all, even though it comes to scouring a floor or washing dishes. I am tired now, just for a little while, but in half an hour I shall be ready to do the same over again. And as to Mr. Thornton's being in trade, why, he can't help that now, poor fellow. I don't suppose his education could fit him for much else. So just, yeah, in the same sentence, noticing, not same sentence, in the same paragraph, noticing how low they've sunk, as well as being like, and it's all for a tradesman so beneath us. There was a lot of that, and it really set the scene for how what their mindset is. And I mean, of course, the mom doesn't really. I mean, when she's like on her deathbed, spoiler alert, when she's on her deathbed, she does kind of come around to Mr. Thornton because he's really kind to her, but. In general, her mindset doesn't really change as far as like these people so beneath us. It's like, you're a pastor's wife. Like, yikes. Then he actually does his first, proposal really early on. Page 174 of like 400. It's pretty early when he does it. In the movie, I did feel a little bit like it was in her favor. The book, not quite so much. And she starts to feel guilty about the way that she spoke to him pretty much right away. He pretty much says, I love you. And she says, I could never love you. And then she like goes in even harder, and he defends his rank and his job and his lifestyle pretty hard, maybe too hard, and that's kind of where they leave it. It's a long, like, it's pages and pages, but he says some stuff that's like, ooh. I mean, he was like writing love letters to her when the way he was speaking. So here's an excerpt. This is from page 176. So this is like close to the end. They've been talking for quite a while now. One more, he says, one word more. You look as if you thought it had tainted you to be loved by me. You cannot avoid it. Nay, I, if I would, cannot cleanse you from it, but I would not, if I could. I have never loved any woman before. My life has been too busy, my thoughts too much absorbed with other things. Now I love, and I will love, but do not be afraid of too much expression on my part. So yeah, she pretty much does act like, how could you possibly, well, first of all, okay, so this is after she saved him from the mob, and she does say, I would have done that to any man, so do not misinterpret it. Like, don't put words in my mouth. That was not, I literally would have done that to any man. I cared more about the people in the mob, than I care about you. She said it straight up. And he had been he's like never had exposure to a woman in his life. So he was so moved by her saving him, that I think that's what kind of brought on this confession from him. But it wasn't just that. I mean, he was kind of feeling a little special feelings toward her, and then they were solidified after that. To be honest, I don't think that scene had much, like, him saving her, her saving him didn't have much to do with his feelings. It was more him realizing, like, what a good woman she is. But she also misinterpreted that. I think she was, like, thinking, excuse me, like, I'm just a good lady. I don't love you. And he's thinking, yeah, you're a good lady. That's why I love you. So they obviously were misinterpreting each other, but there was so much, she went in hard on him, how could you ever love me? And just like he said, you act as though you're tainted by being loved by me. So, yeah, and she deserved it. I mean, she really deserved it. And then after the fact, she quickly goes into this mode of this internal, I don't know, struggle. She starts to, against her better judgment even, comparing him, the way his feelings grew for her, the way that he confessed it, and Lennox, who's that guy who proposed to her at the very beginning. Now she goes out and kind of lists that Lennox had been a friend, and he had barely ever slid into the boundary of cross friendship, and once he had and confessed it, he kind of acted like he never had, and like he was embarrassed that he ever had. And on the opposite side, Mr. Thornton had not ever really been in a friendship zone, but he slid over the boundary into loving her, and he was so adamant about it. I mean, he wasn't embarrassed at all, and just realizing what that meant to her and how she felt about that after the fact. And I really liked hearing this kind of like, just putting, there was a juxtaposition there. So, I just loved hearing, I just really liked it. All right. I just really, 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 really liked that. So to be honest, she kind of has to push aside any kind of thoughts she has about him, though, because there's a lot of things going on in her personal life. Her mother doing badly and her brother having to come to town. I also really enjoyed his kind of monologue or whatever after he leaves her house after proposing to her. He didn't even propose. Truly, he didn't really propose. He was just telling her that he loved her. He didn't get that far. I love this excerpt. Okay. When Mr. I'm so bad at reading aloud, by the way. Thanks. Possible dyslexia. So just bear with me, okay? A trillion jump cuts. When Mr. Thornton had left the house that morning, he was almost blinded by his baffled passion. He was as dizzy as if Margaret, instead of looking, speaking, and moving like a tender, graceful woman, had been a sturdy fishwife and given him a sound blow with her fists. He had positive bodily pain, a violent headache, a throbbing, intermittent pulse. He could not bear the noise, the garish light, the continued rumble and movement of the street. He called himself a fool for suffering so, and yet he could not at any moment recollect the cause of his suffering, and whether it was adequate to the consequence it had produced. It would have been a relief to him if he could have sat down and cried on a doorstep by a little child who was raging and storming through his passionate tears at some injury he had received. He said to himself that he hated Margaret, but a wild, sharp sensation of love cleft his dull, thunderous feeling like lightning, even as he shaped the words expressive of hatred. His greatest comfort was in hugging his torment, and in feeling, as he had indeed said to her, that though she might despise him, condemn him, treat him with her proud, sovereign indifference, he did not change one whit. She could not make him change. He loved her, and he would love her, and defy her, and this miserable bodily pain. Oh! Okay, so, oh my gosh. So good. And then, as I said, yeah, when her mother is on her deathbed, their families become a little bit, I don't know. The mother asks to talk to Mrs. Thornton a few times and asks her to take care of Margaret after she's gone. Mr. Thornton comes multiple times to give exotic fruits, etc., to to the family. And this is kind of a funny excerpt. This is page 192. How kind of him to think of me, Margaret love. Only taste these grapes. Was it not good of him? Yes, said Margaret quietly. Margaret, said Mrs. Hale rather querulously, you wouldn't like anything Mr. Thornton does. I never saw anybody so prejudiced. Mr. Hale had been peeling a peach for his wife, and, cutting off a small piece for himself, he said, if I had any prejudices, the gift of such delicious fruit as this would melt them all away. I have not tasted such fruit. So her family was aware, okay, that she was not having it with him. They were not getting on. They were, not on good terms, really. Just so cute, so sweet. He comes over their house a few times, and this situation is so awkward between them. He just kind of wants to ignore her, and she wants them to be on good terms. So she'll say something, and he'll be like, his reactions to her are so Like, he cannot get over, he's in love with her. He doesn't want to be friends. He doesn't want any of that. He doesn't want this, like, unnecessary cordialness. He wants to be in love. So, an example of that on page 214. Margaret thought about him more than she ever had done before. Not with any tinge of what is called love, but with regret that she had wounded him so deeply, and with a gentle, patient striving to return to their former position of antagonistic friendship. There was a pretty humility in her behavior to him, as if mutely apologizing for the overstrong words which were the reaction from the deeds of the day of the riot. But he resented those words bitterly. They rung in his ears, and he was proud of the sense of justice which made him go on in every kindness he could offer to her parents. He thought that he disliked seeing one who had mortified him so keenly, but he was mistaken. It was a stinging pleasure to be in the room with her and feel her presence. but he was no great analyzer of his own motives, and was mistaken, as I have said. So, like I said, she does, like, put in an eye a couple of times, and I just love the, like, here's how he was feeling. But that was not actually the truth. He was kidding himself, okay? We've got that, right? And then after her mother passes away, something I thought was interesting was that she wasn't going to go to the funeral. They said that women generally don't go to funerals because they are, like, too emotional. And she says, I really want to go to the funeral, and I dislike the fact that women don't go to funerals. Women, it's only higher classes that don't do that. Lower class women are going to funerals and they are showing their emotions with nothing stopping them. And I want to be like that. And that just shows, I think, how much she's changed throughout the course of this book and through all these experiences. And just like in the movie, Margaret convinces, now I've forgotten his name. Higgins, that's who it is. Nicholas Higgins goes to Mr. Thornton and he won't see him. Goes back, he talks to Margaret and he says, like, Mr. Thornton wouldn't see me. And she's like, I'm sure that he will. Like, I know him to be a good man, and I know that he will do the right thing, and I know that he will see you. So Mr. Higgins goes back and he waits there all day long. And Mr. Thornton, this is just like the movie. Mr. Thornton finally is like, what do you want? And he said, I want to work. And he was like, I can't have you work here because you're part of the union. And Mr. Higgins says, I was told by a lady that you were a good guy. I guess she was wrong. Anyway, of course, that pushes him over the edge once again. He starts working for him. He's a very good employee. And they do that plan of the, like, soup kitchen type thing for the employees and buying stuff wholesale, and, like, what a good idea that was. And honestly, like, that was such a good idea. And, like, they literally become kind of, like, unlikely friends. And Margaret is, like, not there, okay? She is literally traipsing. Like, she is not there. First her dad passes away, then she's, like, in the care of Mr. Bell, who does not propose to her. Not even close. He kind of does in the movie, but it's not like that at all. It is not even close in the book, which makes me feel a lot better, because honestly that seems like a little bit creep in the movies. But it's not like that at all. And he takes her around a little bit, and then she goes with her cousins for a long time, and she's, like, being a lady with them. And so she really is not there. And there's a lot of, I don't know if change is the right word. A lot of things go on, like, in Mr. Thornton's life, in the town while she's gone. And she's, like, not really there. She doesn't really know about it necessarily, except things are just not going well for him in general, even though he's, like, doing his best. And the ending, just like the movie, honestly, the ending is, like, even more abrupt than the movie, but it is really sweet. So let me just read it. Take care if you do not speak, I shall claim you as my own in some strange presumptuous way. Send me away at once if I must go. Margaret. At that third call she turned her face, still covered with her small white hands, toward him, and laid it on his shoulder, hiding it even there. And it was too delicious to feel her soft cheek against his, for him to wish to see either deep blushes or loving eyes. He clasped her close, but they both kept silence. At length she murmured in a broken voice, Oh, Mr. Thornton, I am not good enough. Not good enough? Don't mock my own deep feelings of unworthiness. After a minute or two, he gently disengaged her hands from her face and laid her arms as they had once before been placed to protect her from the rioters. Do you not remember, love, he murmured, and how I requited you with my insolence that next day? I remember how wrongly I spoke to you, that is all. Anyway, that was like a page from the end. That was literally the end. So, just like in the movie, they're coming together, whatever reconciliation and reunion is like, that's the end. It's all about their growth kind of while they were apart, and that was what played such a big part in this. But honestly, oh my gosh, it was so good. I love the way they talk to each other, the way they think about each other, the way their thoughts changed about each other. It was all so like powerful, and the way that everything came full circle to her owning the mill, or owning, I mean him being a tenant on her property or whatever. It was just, oh my gosh, the story is, a big recommend. I will say the book is long. It's actually quite long. This is the book. Now the font isn't too small. It's the margins that are so tiny. It's like kind of surprising. I'm like, where do I put my thumb when I'm reading? But thank you for watching. Tell me what you think about this book if you've ever read it. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good day, and I will see you in the next one.